Usually when we picture a doctor's office, we expect privacy, right? Like a closed door, a quiet, protected space.
Yeah, exactly. You think of it as a sanctuary where you can just, be totally vulnerable.
Right. But today, for this deep dive, we're tearing that door right off the hinges. And this is really tailored for you, the curious learner who's looking for a shortcut to the actual truth behind historical myths.
Because the truth about early psychiatry is, well, it's pretty shocking. We're dismantling that 2012 film, Augustine, to look at the real history of Jean-Marc Charcot and Sigmund Freud.
Exactly. So the film frames this whole story as a dark, somewhat empowering romance between Charcot and a confident 19-year-old patient. But the archives tell a completely different story.
Much darker, yeah. The real Louise Augustine Gleises wasn't 19. She was just 14, and she was a severely traumatized victim of abuse.
Right, so Charcot wasn't giving her private therapy at all. It was basically a Victorian reality TV show. Charcot was the producer, Augustine was the tragic star, and the Parisian elites were just the audience tuning in.
Yeah, they literally watched her trauma for high society entertainment.
It's just so messed up. He had her perform naked in these Tuesday clinics at the Salpêtrière Hospital just to prove his theories on hysteria.
It was pure medical theater.
Yeah.
But, Augustine had incredible resilience. When she finally refused to be exhibited as a specimen, they actually threw her into solitary confinement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but she escaped. In 1880, she disguised herself in men's clothing and just vanished entirely from the historical record.
Which is amazing. But okay, so Charcot is putting on this literal show in Paris. How does that theatrical exploitation connect to Freud? I mean, I always picture Freud as this hyper-private guy sitting quietly behind a couch.
Well, that's the irony. Freud actually studied under Charcot, so he absorbed that performative, authority-driven environment.
Right.
And when he went back to Vienna, he internalized that dynamic. It led to some massive ethical blind spots when he was, inventing the whole clinical space.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, the most notorious is the case of Emma Eckstein. She came to Freud with leg pain and some menstrual issues. And Freud's close friend, Wilhelm Flies, convinced them both that he could cure her by operating on her nose.
Her nose. For leg pain.
Yeah, exactly. And Flies botched the surgery terribly. He actually left 0.5 meter of rotting gauze inside her face. She almost bled to death.
Wait, hold on. Okay, let's unpack this. A doctor leaves literal trash in a patient's face, and Freud is just okay with that. How did nobody call this out as gross malpractice?
Because Freud controlled the narrative. Instead of holding his friend accountable, Freud gaslit Eckstein.
You're kidding.
No, he used his own newly minted theories to claim her near-fatal bleeding wasn't from the surgical error. He said it was just hysterical longing for Freud himself.
He blamed her physical hemorrhaging on having a crush on him. That is incredibly convenient for his own reputation. I mean, how much of early psychoanalysis was just Freud projecting his own desperate need to protect his ego?
What's fascinating here is that modern retrospective diagnostics actually support your point. When we look at Freud's documented behaviors, we see profound traits of narcissistic personality disorder.
Really? Like what kind?
Specifically, vulnerable narcissism. His grandiosity, like comparing his own work to Darwin and Copernicus, was highly fragile.
Right. He couldn't handle criticism.
Exactly. When brilliant colleagues like Carl Jung dared to challenge his theories, Freud couldn't just disagree. He reacted with intense hostility and permanently excommunicated them. He needed absolute intellectual control.
And that desperate need for control didn't just stay in his professional life, did it?
Not at all.
He had to control every minute of his day.
Precisely. He dictated these fanatically rigid schedules for his whole household. Modern psychiatrists look at that and see obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, or OCPD. It's this extreme preoccupation with order.
Which perfectly describes his own theory, right?
Yes. The anal retentive personality. The idea that early childhood development dictates an adult's obsessive need for control. He was basically theorizing his own pathology.
So he's pathologizing his own need to micromanage everything. But beneath all that rigid control, the guy was incredibly superstitious, like his absolute terror of the numbers 62 and 63.
Right. If he got a hotel room with those numbers, he was paralyzed by the fear that he would die at that age.
That is wild.
It is. If you look at the bigger picture, you see a man who is terrified of an unpredictable world, trying to exert cognitive control over it, and self-medicating his anxieties in really disastrous ways.
Like the cocaine papers, right? He wanted a miracle breakthrough so badly that he aggressively prescribed cocaine. And that ended up fatally addicting his close friend, Ernst von Fleisch-Marxow, to both morphine and cocaine.
Exactly. So early psychiatry is this complex tapestry. It gives brilliant diagnostic breakthroughs, sure, but they're tightly woven with the profound neuroses and ethical failings of its founders.
They basically used their authority to bend reality around their own egos. So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Well, it leaves us with a lingering question for you to mull over. If the very foundations of modern therapy were built by individuals who actively suppressed trauma to protect their own grandiosity, how many of those Victorian blind spots are still quietly influencing the mental health treatments we receive today?